Welcome everyone to our panel today with our esteemed alumni of our school at Emory Law School. This is the event, the in-house experience, women leaders as general counsel. So welcome everyone. As I introduce our esteemed panelists, I would love for them to turn on their camera. So beginning with Laura Coleman. Laura Coleman is the Vice President of Litigation and the Law Department at Corning Incorporated. Laura joined Corning in 2017 as Vice President in litigation. In this role, she leads Corning's litigation team and manages the company's global litigation matters. Coleman is a seasoned attorney with 30 years of broad litigation experience, including significant trials in patent and securities cases and other commercial litigation matters. She also has extensive experience handling a high-profile internal and external investigations. Prior to Corning, she worked for Dell, where she led the litigation and the intellectual property legal teams. Prior to Dell, Coleman served in senior positions at GTE Corporation, Scientific Atlanta, Bell South, AT&T, and Verizon. She started her legal career in Atlanta at Alston & Bird in the complex litigation and antitrust practice group. Coleman holds a Bachelor of Arts in International Relations from Kent State University and a Doctor of Jurisprudence from Emory University. So welcome, Laura.
Thank you.
Next, Jennifer Hightower. Jennifer Hightower is the Senior Vice President and General Counsel at Cox Communications. And let me read. As Senior Vice President and General Counsel at Cox Communications, Hightower oversaw the company's compliance, legal operations, litigation, regulatory, and public affairs, and corporate government affairs. She joined Cox in 1997 as legal counsel and later was promoted to Assistant General Counsel, where she oversaw all transactional and operational legal support. Prior to joining Cox, Hightower served in various legal positions at Bell South Corporation, Racetrack Petroleum, and Drew, Eckel & Farnham. Hightower holds a law degree from Emory University School of Law and a bachelor's degree from Vanderbilt University. She's also a graduate of the Stanford Executive Management Program. She has been named a Georgia Super Lawyer 3 times, is a graduate of the 2012 Leadership Atlanta class, and serves on the boards of the Atlanta Women's Foundation and Covenant House of Georgia. She's married to an entrepreneur and is the mother of 3 boys. Welcome, Jennifer. And then Teri McClure. Teri McClure is retired General Counsel and Chief Human CHRO at UPS. Corporate executive Teri McClure was born in 1963 in Kansas City, Kansas. She received her BA degree from Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri in marketing and economics, and went on to earn her JD degree from Emory University School of Law in Atlanta. McClure began practicing employment and labor law in Atlanta in 1988 and then began working for the United Parcel Service in 1995 as employment counsel to the corporate legal department. McClure became Vice President of Operations for UPS in 1999, the year UPS became a public corporation, and then was Vice President of Operations for the Central Florida District in 2003. During this time, McClure managed over 4,000 employees and was responsible for all aspects of package pickup and delivery in that area. From 2004 to 2005, McClure served as the Compliance Department Manager for UPS, in which capacity she worked to ensure that the company followed ethical and legal business practices. After that, she was quickly promoted to Compliance Department Manager and then was promoted again to the Corporate Legal Department Manager. In 2006, McClure became the first African-American Senior Vice President and General Counsel and Corporate Secretary at UPS. This was a time when only 15.7% of top corporate executives were women and only 1.6% of them were African-American. McClure served on the board of UPS Foundation, which is the charitable arm of the UPS Corporation. She has also served on the board of the Annie E. Casey Foundation, Junior Achievement Worldwide, Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, the Atlanta Legal Aid Society, Equal Justice Works, and the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. McClure served as co-chair of the Georgia Supreme Court's Committee on Civil Justice and was involved with other civic, religious, and professional organizations. So welcome everyone, and thank you for being here to discuss your experiences, which have, as I described in the opening, are quite varied. So why don't we start off with, what do you guys consider? I read a little bit of your bio, but what do you consider is some of the vital skills in how you achieve to where you are now in the path?
Anyone? Hey, Natasha. Well, thanks for inviting us to participate in this panel, and excited to talk to the team. I mean, that's a broad question. There's a lot of things that have happened over the years that I think have contributed to the trajectory of my career. I think certainly private practice was extremely important. I practiced in 3 different firms before joining UPS. I, contrary to the typical path, I started out in a small firm and went to a medium-sized firm and then a large firm before transitioning in-house. And that was very, very critical. It was important that I had the skills for that are learned in outside practice, truly understanding how to litigate and how to manage cases. But once I became an in-house counsel, I think the most important thing was not only working in the legal department and being flexible enough to go into various departments beyond labor and employment law, but also moving into the operations side of the business and truly learning the business from the ground up. And I think that's really what made the difference in being given the opportunity to become general counsel.
Great. And Teri, I have to interject just 1 second because for the panel, for the attendees, I forgot a little bit of housekeeping.
I can do that.
Note that this is going to be recorded.
Sorry, my husband wanted to join the panel. Go.
This program is recorded and the chat is disabled, but you will be able to ask questions in the Q&A section. Okay, thank you, Teri. Jennifer, what do you think about what are some of probably the specific things that you think have led you to where you are now in your path?
It's a great question. And one, I want to say thanks for including me today. It's a great honor to be here. And I love being with Laura and Teri. Laura and I were classmates. So we were actually like small group mates. So I'm like, oh, it's one of my old friends. So this is really wonderful for me. I haven't seen her in far, far too long. So a great question. For me, the issue was learning to take different risk. I think Teri said it exactly right. You have to be flexible. You have to be open for new opportunities. The thing that helped me most with my career, truthfully, was learning the business that I was supporting. My path was different than Teri's. I was in a firm for years, but I did litigation, and I learned quickly that I hated being a litigator. So I had to find a different way to work through a career trajectory. And every place I was being interviewed was to be a litigator, and I didn't want to be a litigator. So I had to pivot. Long story, I don't need to go into it. I mean, I can as life goes on, but I wound up getting to Bell South, where I learned that I very much like the telecom industry. And I started to learn the industry that I was in as a lawyer, but I really learned the business. And then fortunately for me, I was able to switch to Cox Communications, which was just at that time moving into the telecommunications industry. And I just had that fortune of learning the business. I started off as a baby business lawyer at Cox and took every opportunity that was given to me to learn different areas of the business and to learn different areas of law that supported that business. And because of that, it enabled me to have a trajectory to move up through the Cox legal department. So sincerely, I started as the baby lawyer and I wound up as the general counsel, and then recently have left that company and come to the parent company. And it's because I just learned so much about the Cox business, the Cox family, the Cox values. So my long way of saying, you're going to learn a lot in law school, but you're going to have to continue to learn and develop after law school to establish your career.
And I would add my own thanks for being included in this distinguished panel with Jennifer and Teri. Not being a general counsel, I'm happy to round out the panel, but those are 2 distinguished careers and really sophisticated Atlanta-based companies. So they've got a lot to share about their companies and their trajectory. I would say I would not be an in-house lawyer if I just hadn't been kind of thrust into it, I'd probably still be at my law firm because I didn't really know what an in-house lawyer did. But I did a lot of work with GTE based in Atlanta, and I did a lot of work with American Airlines based in Dallas. And both of them had very distinguished law departments. And I went on site for a long time in Dallas on American Airlines, a lot of frontline work on some big antitrust cases in the industry. And then I was also seconded for what was supposed to be 2 weeks to GTE out on the perimeter, right across from Perimeter Mall there. And I ended up being there 9 months, and the general counsel just kept giving me more duties. I realized I was acting Southeast general counsel in an operations role a few months later, but I was a litigator. So I started to see these tremendous lawyers and how interesting their jobs were. Otherwise, I might not have gone in-house. I think now there's more information about the in-house roles, but it's a different kind of a job, and you're drawn to it because it's very demanding. There's no script, and every day is different. And so it's about using your judgment, being able to assess risk and make a decision where there's no good decision. And it has a very complex setting. So it isn't like a law firm where someone says, can you give me advice on a narrow issue? It's suddenly somebody comes in your door, you have a problem, or you have a problem remote in another country or in another state, and you just got to ask the right questions and figure out what to do. So it was the in-house role was very attractive to me, but I lucked out in just ending up being on site on these 2 law departments and then deciding that I liked it. So I went in-house on the GTE legal team, and then through successive mergers have made different moves in my career.
I think Laura just said something really so apt, because it's something I wish I'd answered a little bit more artfully. In-house is a definite different career track than private practice. I think Teri's exactly right. To be a really good in-house lawyer, you have to have done private practice first. But I do think you need to, I think a lot of people think to go in-house, you want to go in-house because it's less hours and maybe less stress. And that's not true. I mean, I think you see Teri shaking her head. It's not true. I think my husband would be the first to attest to it. And I will also say, just so everybody knows, the higher up you go, it doesn't mean the less work. Because I think that's all another myth. You get up higher, you get paid more and you work less. That isn't true. So just being mindful of that when you think about your career trajectory. I mean, being a lawyer is a phenomenal career, but it's a demanding career. And and Emory is going to prepare you incredibly well for it. But the reality is it's a demanding career. It's a demanding career as an outside lawyer, and it's a demanding career as an inside lawyer. And Laura's right. I think being an inside lawyer, an in-house lawyer, you just have to be ready to pivot. For me, being an in-house lawyer, I love it because it is exactly that. It's a new issue every day, but at the same time, it's a new issue every day. So if you really want to be the expert on things, you may not want to be an in-house counsel because it's kind of hard to be an expert at everything that's thrown at you.
Yeah.
Good.
That is
Agreed.
a great point. The higher up you get, the more you work.
Well, you do.
Yeah. So did the 3 of you, and I'll start with you, Teri, did you find this track, how was it particularly challenging being a woman in a field that probably has always been dominated by men? And Teri, also with the intersectionality of being African-American as well and a woman, the sort of rise to your position. How did you find it challenging, and how did you meet those challenges? And I'll start with Teri and then.
Yeah, I mean, I think no doubt, particularly you think, this was almost 30 years ago. I've been practicing for 30 years now. So as common as it seems now, it wasn't back then. And I recall very distinctly, labor and employment, there tended to be more women in labor and employment law than some of the other areas of law. But once you move in-house, there were not very many women at all. I think that one of the biggest challenges, certainly, and for me, was working in an industry like transportation, where the entire business was very male dominated. And so many times as the lawyer giving advice to my business partners, I was the only female in the room. I was the only, at sometimes African-American female in the room, or even African-American in the room. And so it was challenging gaining trust, building relationships, getting people to see you and trust your advice and understand and respect you as an attorney and as the legal advisor for the organization. And I think the other piece of it was certainly, balancing. I raised my children. I think I transitioned from outside practice to in-house counsel right after having my second child. And part of the thinking was around whether or not I really wanted to be a partner in a law firm. Part of the thinking was maybe I could have better managed hours going in-house. But as Jennifer said, I think the only difference is you may have a little bit better control of your time in-house than you do working in private practice, but the demands are still there. And so, balancing while working a full-time job, raising two children was definitely a challenge, and something that the company wasn't necessarily used to because, again, predominantly male organization, whether or not you're supporting the business side or the legal side, most of the men were not having to take care of home and the office at the same time. So definitely was a challenge. I think things have gotten better. I'll give you one example though. When I was at my second law firm back in the early 90s, they did not have a maternity leave policy at that time. There were 3 women at the firm. And at that time, we didn't have it. So we didn't know what would happen if we had got pregnant. None of us. And so we all got together and just went to the senior partnership and said, look, none of us is pregnant. We just want to know what would happen. Do we get paid leave? Do we get time off? What would happen? And one of the partners pulled me aside and basically said, hey, don't associate yourself with the other folks. We'll take care of you. But, one of those folks is not someone you want to associate yourself with. And so that was the mentality, 25 years ago, 30 years ago. A lot has changed since then. In reality, I think firms and legal departments are much more sensitive to the work-life balance issues, both for men and for women. And while the work is still demanding, and certainly businesses are much more used to having women in decision-making roles and giving advice to the organization, the personal balance is still a challenge and something that we all just have to learn how to deal with.
Mhm.
Yeah. Jennifer, anything to
Yeah,
say?
I was just mentally, I don't have I don't have the career trajectory that Teri did. I didn't practice in firms because, to be honest, as I shared, I didn't like what I was doing. But I think she said it so aptly. I can say it's still a challenge. I think there is a growing interest on corporations to ensure that they are supporting, the teams that they have supporting their legal needs are more diverse. That's become a bigger goal for a lot of companies, to ensure that they have a diverse panel of lawyers. It's something that unfortunately, it's still aspirational because there's not as many minority partners at firms as there should be. So it's something I think we all need to continue to work on. And the challenge of being a working mother is it's a real thing. I mean, I think it is better than it was when I think the 3 of us were starting. But it is something that I think you just have to acknowledge when you are a young aspirational lawyer. As I said, this is a challenging career. It's choose a good partner, because it's a partnership. If you don't have the right partner, you need to think about that, because you're going to need a partner in this to make it to the top. You're going to need someone who can balance with you. You can't do it all. You cannot do it all by yourself.
I totally agree. I think the legal profession is one of the better professions for women. And I think Atlanta is a terrific place personally, the Atlanta Women's Foundation and the bar. And it's amazing how people turn out. And I used to tell stories about some of the little cases I'd have just to round out my experience. I'd have a small town lawyer with some like lemon law case against Chrysler or something. I'd have some little case just to do experience. And the men of the bar were so genteel. They would like call the managing partner when I was done with this case that I totally overworked the file because I was young. And he called the senior partner. He said, that Laura Coleman, she whooped me like a dog. Man, is she a good lawyer, or something like that. There was just always this there was this professionalism by the really established male lawyers in some of the small towns outside of Atlanta or whatever. There's an acceptance of diversity in the Atlanta bar, the Atlanta area, that I think is wonderful. And Emory's a big part of that as a big cultural institution. They're educational institution. So is Georgia State. But there has been such rapid change that I'm hopeful that in the period that I've seen change, there's just going to be tremendous change again because of flexibility, remoteness, more global. So equal parenting obligations, the people's families look different. People are going to be commuting, telecommuting. I think there'll be a lot more flexibility. When I interviewed with a firm once for a summer associate position, I remember during the interviews with the men of the firm, they said, "We have a woman partner. We have a woman partner now. Did you meet the woman partner? We have a woman partner." And it's like, I have a pet rabbit. It's like, so finally, after lunch, I met the woman partner who was a humorless, dour-looking woman who chain smoked in my face across the desk. But they were so excited they had a woman partner, and she was really unimpressive. But it's so, there's plenty of stories, but it's dramatically better and different than what we really need are the women general counsels and the women CEOs. The top of the chain, there's so much diversity in American corporations and in-house legal teams, but we really do need more people at the top, those leaders at the top. That'll make recruiting easier, and I think that expands judgment. I think when you have diversity of thought, you make better decisions, you communicate better as a company and with your customers. If you look at some of the more regulated industries like telecom, they drove more diversity. I look at Bell South, Jennifer and I were both at, just a success story on diversity, because they were meeting with regulators. They had to relate to people in government, and government was more diverse. So there's certain industries, certain cities that are doing better than others, but there definitely is more to be done. But I'm hopeful that the pace of change will be fast.
Natasha, I think one thing that's very important is for women to have allies. I recall very early on, a partner introduced me. I was the only female and the only young African-American associate in the firm. And one of the partners at another firm who knew me just introduced me to another African-American female who was at another firm down the street. And we developed, a lifelong relationship, and we were able to talk outside of the firm, check each other, get perspective on issues, how to respond to situations. And even as I was having children, the other two women who asked about the maternity leave policy, we all ended up having our children around the same time. And it became a very important support group for whether we were trying to understand how to balance things, get insights on how to deal with situations with our partners, with timing, whatever the issues were. It's important to have allies and individuals and a support team that you can help benchmark with and just share concerns and have a way to have an outlet for your frustrations. Because you don't want to take it into the office, you never let them see you sweat, but you definitely want to have people that you can bring around you to help support you during these times. And Jennifer's absolutely right. A good partner in the process is critical as well.
Yeah. And I want to springboard off that into my next question, but I do want to let the attendees know that if you have a question you'd like to be asked, please type it in the Q&A portion of this, that's at the bottom of your screen. But, you mentioned allies. What about mentorship? Did each of you find that there were specific people who were in positions of power, when you first began, that served as mentors to be quite useful and instructive to you? And I also want to tag on to that is that, do you think that mentorship must be another woman, or can it be just, does a mentor have to be defined in a specific way? If for those who are seeking out mentors, what would you say?
I'm happy to go first. I'm sure everybody's got input here. So yes, the answer is you definitely have to have a mentor. And I'm sure all of you have heard this. There's a distinction. You have to have a mentor and you also have to have a sponsor. There's no question that it's a different role, but you got to have both. And if you don't understand what I'm sharing, when I say a mentor is someone who can help tutelage you and it's a good sounding board, but a sponsor is the person who's going to help promote you in your career. And usually you don't go seek out a sponsor seeks you. At least in my case, a sponsor just sort of appears. It's somebody you've actually impressed, and then it's somebody at a position that can sponsor you. And then you have to work the relationship, but you don't go ask them to be your sponsor. That's, yes, you can ask people to be your mentor, but to ask me to be your sponsor would be a little artificial. I have had, and for me, in all honesty, my mentors and sponsors have evolved over my career. I have different ones at different times, but I still have that old core that's still in my space. It's a long way of saying I don't think you're going to ever have just one. Maybe some others have had that, but I've had multiple, and they help me in different ways. And yes, I've had lots of women because at times in my life I've needed that, particularly when I was going through the more early years of children. I needed more insights as to how to navigate. I needed more insights as to what I could ask for, because sometimes you're going to ask for things that are off the chart of plans, but if you've got the right group behind you, sponsoring you, you know what you can ask for. But as life goes on, that group will change, and I think you need to evolve with those people. I think where I was also going to go is I do think women are incredible mentors and sponsors, but I have always found that I've also had men that have given me a different perspective. And I would say that's helped me a great deal, because you have to be able to understand the audience you're working for. And honestly, sometimes that audience has men making the decisions. So you also need to understand how to message in a way that a man would want to receive the message. So for me, I've had to balance my sponsors and my mentors, if that helps.
Yeah, for me, quite frankly, all of my mentors have been men, because those typically were the people that I was interacting with. My first mentor is still my mentor today. He was on the board of UPS when I joined the company, and he was a lawyer, and he happened to be handling some class action litigation that I was going to be involved in, and we spent hours in mediations and arbitrations, and I learned so much just sitting at his feet and watching him work and learning about the company and learning about history. And he was very helpful in helping me navigate my career through UPS. Jennifer's right. The sponsor that I had was someone in the business side of the organization that I had worked with, supported. And when he was in the room, when the decisions were being made, and he's the one that raised my name when I didn't even know that there was an opportunity being considered. I will say that the women that I've interacted with have been more peer mentors, my counterparts, who we've sort of mentored each other, as I just talked about, when we were having children or when we were transitioning firms. I call them peer mentors, and they're very valuable as well. I think the most important thing is to be aware that there are people that will have influence over your career, not just mentors or sponsors, but people who you don't even like. And one of the things I learned is I worked in a law firm for an individual partner who I could not stand. And he kept giving all the work to the paralegal, and we never got any of the good work. And didn't like him at all, didn't like working for him. He smoked all the time and didn't even want to go to the floor where he worked on to get an assignment, because you reeked of smoke. At that time, it was allowed in the facility. But he's the one that actually recommended me for my job at UPS. And so the thing that I learned over the years was, wherever you are, you never let them see whether you like it or not. If you don't like it, then you put on a good face and you keep going in and you look for another job on the side. But your attitude always should be positive and encouraging, because you never know who's watching, and you never know who might be able to have an impact on your career long term. And he and I ultimately became very good friends. But at the time that he recommended me for the position, I didn't even know he was doing it for his own benefit, because he wanted to keep the work at UPS and thought I would keep giving it to him if I became in-house counsel. And it turned out it was for both of us. So just be mindful of those people as well.
I would just add quickly, I've never had a mentor that I can think of. I worked with so many wonderful, influential people, but with so much change in an organization, the formal mentor programs never seemed to work, because it seemed to be forced on the male executives, and they weren't really interested in mentoring. So it would fizzle after the first meeting. But I did a lot of my own mentoring of women, which I really enjoyed. Women in China, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, England, US. And I enjoyed mentoring them, but you need to want to do that. Those are evening calls. It takes time. But I think they all benefited from it. I just think you have to find the right mentor. It can't be someone sort of assigned to you. It has to be someone who enjoys helping you. So I think it's definitely beneficial, but I agree with Teri and Jennifer both. Sometimes the support is really in just your peers or having a sounding board outside of your organization. So you don't lose your cool within, or you can just find out that, okay, it's the same at other places. All right, I can handle this.
Yeah.
So that helps a lot. That's a big part of the support structure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and wherever you, I'm sorry, I'll just say one more thing. Wherever you go, you will find your organization will have a formal mentoring program. And it's a good thing to do to learn what you should process as a mentoring program. But I completely agree with Laura. A real mentor is more of an organic thing. It's not something that is structured. If you're fortunate to have that, that's great. But I'm going to say it's only going to work if you put the energy into it. Having been a mentor on those professional programs, if I have a mentee that's not purposeful and intentional, there's a realization after a while that this isn't really going to be something I'm going to invest energy and time into either.
Yeah.
Not to be so direct, but there's only so much time in the day, and you're going to direct it to the person that actually is intentional with their time and intentional with meeting with you and understands what they're looking for versus being the mentee who's like, well, I just want change. Well, I don't know what that means for that person. So I just would say be intentional with what when you do meet with mentors.
Yes.
Right.
So we have a question in the chat, and this is related to experience in the path to the general counsel experience. Do you think it's imperative to have firm experience throughout a legal career? My career path, this questioner's career path, has afforded regulatory experience and now in-house experience, but never law firm experience. And I'm going to tag on to that, the path now might be different than it was 25 years ago in the way corporations are hiring. So we'd love to hear who would like to take it.
Actually, I'll take that because I do a lot of hiring, and I'm sure Jennifer and Teri have. We're looking for skill sets. So there is no formula. In the old days, in-house lawyers tended to be 50-year lawyers and beyond or something like that, because you're thrown into it and no one really has the resources to train someone at entry level, though more and more in-house people are hiring entry level, particularly to get diversity of backgrounds and to groom people to join law departments full time. And sometimes they do that through summer intern programs, et cetera. But I would say anyone who's got government or regulatory experience and in-house, that's great. That's sweet. Because what we're really after are people with good judgment, good experience, good communicators, people that will take care of things and won't have surprises. So if you're mature and you're experienced, even if your experience doesn't exactly match what the job will be, if you've just got people skills, analytical skills, that's what we're looking for. We're not going to pass over a resume because it doesn't have law firm experience. At least I wouldn't. I suppose it's possible someone else would. I don't know what Jennifer and Teri think.
Yeah, I'm actually happy to supplement to that too. We actually, one of the shining lawyers in my department was an intern at Cox through college. She went to Georgia State, and she was an intern, and we hired her outside of law school, and she is still with us, and she's a rock star. Now, I will be transparent. There was a period of time where we went and sent her to a law firm just to give her that law firm experience because she really needed it to understand the speed of pace. But she also truthfully could have figured that out on her own because she's that bright. I'm with Laura. You don't have to have been in a firm. I think working for the government, particularly if you're in a regulatory field, is phenomenal because that gives you a different level of experience. And the truth is, you have to show in the interview and in your job performance, you're smart, you're inquisitive, and you're going to respond to the demands of the job to be successful. I mean, law firm experience is very helpful. It's very helpful, but it's not mandatory in any sense. It's helpful because it teaches you the law in a way that you don't learn in law school. But as long as you're inquisitive and intelligent, you're going to figure that out on your own too.
Right.
I agree.
So we have another question. Would you recommend seeking out secondments at law firms? Are they an accurate representation of in-house counsel, of the in-house role?
I can speak. We use them quite frequently. I don't think it's anything that you can really seek out because it's typically based on the needs of the company at a particular time, whether someone's out on maternity leave or there's a particular initiative that's going on. And it's usually it's based on a relationship with the external law firm, where there's someone in the law firm that knows the business and can come and sit inside for a period of time. I did that when I was in private practice. I was seconded to one of our clients, but it's not really something that you can, as an associate or as a young attorney, just go out and seek, because it's really based on unique circumstances and typically a prior relationship.
I think that's right.
Yep.
I mean, if
Right.
you get the opportunity to do it at the firm, I mean, if you're at a firm where you can go say to somebody, I'd love to do it, it's a great thing to do. It's certainly a great way to get to know the company if you have an interest in in-house. It'll also give you, to answer that, I think the question also was, is it an accurate reflection of in-house? I think it is. I mean,
I think so.
you're not going to get the complete breadth of variety that you would be as the in-house lawyer, because the secondment lawyer is there to do a specific role. And that role is not going to be quite as broad typically, at least the way we use it. It's exactly what Teri said. We have a need for one thing. And so we need that person to go do that role, but you'll have the opportunity to meet the people, and you're going to have exposure to the department holistically. So that'll help you in your career advancement. If that's a goal to go in-house one day.
I agree.
And here's another question. How do you, in this mentorship discussion, but how do you go about asking someone to be your mentor? Like, what would be the opening line or the opening question?
I'll start. I personally wouldn't say, will you be my mentor necessarily, because they might not think, time commitment or what is that, or formality or something, but something more soft, like, would it be possible to get on your calendar sometime for 30 minutes to get your feedback on a couple of questions? Then a busy problem solver says, oh, okay, manageable. I got something I can dig in. And then you'll get some feedback, whether that person enthusiastically says yes, and take it from there. I would do something sort of a soft opening like that. I don't know what others think.
Totally agree. I'd ask to either get on the calendar or I'd ask to have coffee. And I would not go in with the line of, will you be my mentor? It's just, it just doesn't work that way, because the mentor, you typically, I mean, it could, I'm sorry to say that, but typically what would happen is the person would say, well, I don't know you well enough, or I don't know if I have time. But if you do, I think Laura said it aptly, if you do the soft ask and you go meet with them and you're prepared in the meeting, like, you need to be prepared. You'll be surprised at how easy it is to just sort of fall into a cadence of saying, thanks, I love this. Do you mind if I get on your calendar again? And then over time, you just have this natural organic relationship.
Yeah.
I agree.
Questions are coming in, so I'll start to field them, which is great. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, attendees, for your insightful questions. How long do you recommend spending in big law before transitioning to an in-house career? That's how you've begun.
Yeah, no, I think Laura mentioned it earlier. It typically used to be about 5 years, but I don't think that's the case any longer. I think 3 to 5 years is a good range. And it largely just depends on what skills you've developed during that time. I mean, back in the day, you could be at a law firm for, a year to 2 years and not even take a deposition. I don't think that's the case now. I think law firms are getting, attorneys much more engaged, much more client facing earlier in the process. So as long as you're developing the skills and understand and have an understanding of the law and how the client works, I think you can, once you get a comfort level with that and feel confident, you should still start to look at in-house opportunities.
Yeah,
I agree with Teri. I'm sorry. I was going to also add, on the other end, I think it's changing. I've recently, last year or two, hired lawyers with 10 years, 15 years, and somebody with more. So, a partner out of a law firm. So it's a broader spectrum. I think there's lots more flexibility. I don't think there's one model. I'm sorry, I spoke over something.
No, I actually think that's the best thing. That's incredibly insightful, because I think Laura's right. It is a range. And I think the reality is you have to acknowledge wherever you are will be the right time. You just may come in at a different level. So if and that's going to be something you're going to have to just know. Everybody wants to come in as a VP. That just doesn't happen in-house. There's just not that many roles. But that doesn't mean coming in as corporate counsel, senior counsel, assistant general counsel aren't phenomenal roles. So that would make a little bit of a difference also in your decision-making of where you are in your career as an external or outside lawyer, about the level what are the opportunities at the company so that you can go get into the company. There's just not that many roles internally. So keep that in mind too.
Yeah. This question is from Jen Green. First and foremost, thank you for your time this morning. Pivot is the perfect word for my daily job description as a senior corporate counsel at a telecommunications company. As you all have said, being a specialist is difficult when having a generalist role. Do you find yourself outsourcing area cases to appropriately balance the business needs? My general counsel is quick to send things out, and I'm interested in knowing if that is fairly standard in your organizations as well.
You know, I think every company operates their legal department differently. UPS was largely an outsourced legal department a function. We outsourced our legal function in the sense that there was a small internal law group which managed outside litigators because we were operating in 200 countries all around the world, and we had 400,000 employees. The issues that we were dealing with weren't something that we could do in-house on a regular basis, or else we would have had to have people barred in every state and representatives for many countries around the world. So ours was typically an oversight and management legal department that then relied very heavily on external counsel. There are other legal departments that operate very differently. They try to bring as much work in-house. They typically are dealing with issues that are geographically centralized. And so they can have people who are barred and have relationships with the bar in those geographic areas. And more of those firms are willing to take on the litigation and the full scale of case management. So it's important that as you're looking to go in-house, you understand and do a little research in advance to sort of understand the model for that particular legal department, because not all legal departments operate the same.
Okay.
I would add that the cost of law firms is driving people on the inside more and more to say, well, can we outsource this, or can I just figure it out without asking them? Because the business model for the law firms, their hourly rates are just, when it's $1,500 hourly rates, it just really incents you to try to figure it out or do a good enough job, unless you have an issue that it makes sense to hire that outside resource because they're getting so much more expensive. So that's the constant balance as well.
I'll just say one other thing about, if you're thinking about going in-house, that's knowing yourself and knowing how you want to practice law is very crucial. Because a good in-house counsel is not necessarily someone who wants to go deep and have deep experience on a particular issue. I kind of think of it this way, and is that typically when you're in-house counsel, you have to make decisions based on 30% of the information. And when you're outside counsel, you have to go deep and you have to know 90% of the information. And so you have to learn what you're comfortable with. I've had in-house counsels who wanted to treat a matter the same as they would if they were in a law firm and go very deep and get all of the facts. And you just don't have time sometimes to operate in that way. You have to feel comfortable making decisions and giving advice based on limited information. And so you have to know yourself. Some attorneys are comfortable doing that and can kind of fly at that level. And then some people don't. They want to go deep and have full and complete understanding before giving their advice. If that's the case, then you're probably better off outside than you would be inside.
That's really insightful. And I will also say, being in-house, you're not going to be an expert on, and if you like that, I think Laura would be in the sense of a litigation person at her level. She's an expert litigator, but at my level, I mean, I'm a generalist. So if I'm comfortable with that understanding about my skill set. But if you are the kind of person who likes to be the expert and likes people to look to you in that way, you probably need to think about maybe being the outside lawyer or having a very deep resume on the external before you come in-house, because it's hard to become an expert in-house because you just don't have as much exposure to really learning the law that deeply. You're just really busy. It's just a different pace. You've got to know your business when you're in-house.
Okay. This next question is from Lauren Firestone. I am going into a field which is not traditionally on the resumes of in-house counsel, as I'm working in mutual funds at a law firm. Should I try to get experience in other areas and transition from the practice group, or could this be sufficient still since it's still transactional work?
I think it depends on the skill set and what the job you're doing. You always want to make your resume broad enough that it catches someone's eye, or they don't, think, oh, this person just does advice and they don't do disputes, or this person just does compliance and doesn't do law, or, you want to broaden things. So I don't know exactly what's involved in your practice, but I would make sure that it somehow describes, without being too wordy, describes what you do. Are you a project manager, or do you do risk assessments? Are you a litigator? But put some of the accomplishments in there, process improvements or things like that. But if you can broaden it within the firm, I think broader experience tends to be better.
I would agree. I would also say, that area of law, mutual funds, is it's complex transactions. And it's definitely, it shows you have an understanding of financial negotiations. So it's definitely not a problematic area. That's a good thing to be doing, but Laura's right. You always want to have broad scope. More breadth gives you more opportunities.
Natasha, you're on mute.
I think we've answered the questions so far. I'm going to sort of begin to talk a little bit about, what do you wish you knew, back now, knowing what you know now, what do you wish you knew back when you were in law school and back when, you were just starting out as a young attorney? And I'll start with you, Laura.
It's you always look back. It's sort of like when we talked about getting busier as you go up the chain, and also you look back at the last job and you really liked the last job because it was more comfortable. And I don't want to scare anybody, but your time it becomes the most precious element, in everything we talk about. And so when you look back early in your career, you're just so worried about money, or where's it going, or am I going to pay off my student loans? I wish I just relaxed and know that in the long term, it's going to pay off. And in the moment, enjoy myself on a Saturday afternoon, because in the future, you might have some crisis in China and you spend all Saturday on the phone or something, and you are more in control of your time. It's more flexible. Enjoy what you enjoy. If you enjoy music or you enjoy your friends, enjoy it a little bit more and learn to relax a little bit, and don't be always thinking about the next thing, because there's so much more time crunch coming, for good and for bad, in your career and your life. And if you have kids, that I wish I'd relaxed a little bit and just kind of took it a step at a time.
Yeah. For me, it's don't get caught up in whether or not you graduate in the top 10%. I think, sort of to Laura's point, where you graduate, where you end up in the ranking at law school is not determinative of your career. It's not limiting in any way. And quite frankly, I don't even know if they've looked at my grades past the first job that I ever hired. I got positions and opportunities based on my performance, based on my reputation, based on relationships. And that's what's going to carry you. So invest in those things: your integrity, your reputation, your performance. Work hard. Those are the things that will get you opportunities in the future, not whether or not you graduated in the top 10%. It's helpful to have that. Sure, it's going to give you more opportunities to start, but don't feel like that's limiting in any way if that's not your case.
These ladies are brilliant. They both make me feel better, and I wish I'd heard what they said when I was graduating, because they could not be more spot on. The only other thing I would also add is, you're better than you think you are. I know to this day I'm better than I think I am. I still beat myself up. And you think, well, goodness, I'm 55. When do I get over it? It's just part of being a type A personality. So let's just acknowledge that if you're one of those. The other thing, what I would say is be willing to take risks. I was able to to advance my career and to get to where I am today was because I was open to opportunities being presented to myself. It was definitely not a trajectory of, you didn't take step to get to this level. I was like, okay, I'm going to learn something different because I want to learn something different. And I want to be challenged in a different way. And all those things enabled me to somehow get to where I am today. So I was just really lucky. But I think the other thing is just to take a deep breath and try to enjoy it more than just overthinking it.
Yeah. So we do have another question, one more question. And, obviously we're all experiencing this pandemic and how it's affected our working life. And this particular attendee is asked, if you were a first-year associate, how would you tackle everyday professional life during a pandemic? Whoops, not finished reading. How would you tackle everyday professional life during a pandemic with all the complications we are experiencing? How would you interact with attorneys who you haven't really met in person, and who you depend on getting your billables? And that is something that, the summer students never really in person met their attorneys that they're working for. Our first-year students, first-year associates have not actually physically been in an office and meeting their attorneys. How would you, what best do you advise them now, and how can they transition when things do resume to some semblance of normality?
Yeah, so Natasha, my daughter is in that very case. She graduated from law school in May and went through the craziness of the bar exam this summer. So I feel for all of the graduates who had to go that. She started her first time, her job with her law firm in January, on Monday of this week. And so I'll give you all the same advice that I gave her. Be proactive. Don't sit and wait. Use video conferencing, use emails to let people know that you're there, to let people know that you're interested in getting to know them, not just get work, to let people know that, and that's one thing that I think is people miss the opportunity to develop relationships before asking for work or asking for help or providing services. When I went into UPS for the first time, someone gave me the good, very good advice that I follow to this day of, map out who you're going to interact with, map out the people you're going to be providing services for, map out the people that are going to be helping you provide those services, and then just take some time now via video, or when we can back in person, do it in person, to just sit down and talk to them and let them start talking. Don't just talk about yourself and who you are. It's amazing how much people want to talk about themselves, and you give them an opportunity. They'll just, how did you get to your career? What are you focused on? What's important to you? Let them talk. You learn a lot about what their priorities are, what's important to them. If you're a new associate, spend some time. Ask, can I have 5 minutes on your calendar just to introduce myself and to hear from you what your expectations are? And that's what I told my daughter. Don't just sit back and wait for someone to reach out to you. Let them know you're there. Let them know what you're doing or what you're not doing, and let them know that you're interested in getting to know them better and to help them meet their needs. Because people value that someone who's thinking about how they can be of assistance in meeting their needs.
Yes. Any last comments on that?
I think I would add a narrow point, because I think Teri covered it. That's excellent. A narrower point, I think I might have heard embedded in the question, is if you do work for someone, lawyers are not good managers. Lawyers are not good about giving feedback. And if you don't know, how did I do on that project? Is that what she wanted? Is it not what she wanted? And a polite follow-up to say, did you get what you needed? Is there anything else I can do? Because you do want to know if you overshot it and it was too long and it wasn't helpful. Or you do want to know, yeah, it was really helpful. By the way, could you send me a copy again or something? So just, you might try the sort of one sentence follow-up, nothing lengthy, just to see how'd I do on the work that you do have. That would be the only tactical point that I would add.
And Laura, to your point, don't be afraid of criticism. I mean, the reality of it is, as a first-year associate, when you come out, you don't know a lot, and there will be time to learn. You're going to get better at your writing skills. You're going to get better at reading the room and understanding what people want. The right answer is just part of it, but how it's presented, the context in which it's provided, what they're trying to accomplish beyond that answer, you have to understand. So don't be afraid of criticism. I mean, I learned, my first law firm assignment was with Ford and Harrison, and there was a woman there by the name of Paula Hilburn. And I swear she taught me how to write, and I never saw more red than you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, every document we did went through Paula, and we used to hate it, but it was the best thing that could have happened to me as a young attorney. I learned how to make my writing so much more crisp and so much more concise. And so just kind of toughen up that first year or so, and just recognize that you're going to get corrected. You're going to get, things are not always going to be perfect, but use every opportunity as a learning opportunity to build on.
That's true.
Great. Well, thank you so much for all of you being here and sharing your insight and your wisdom and your path to all of the attendees on the call. And also for those who will be probably viewing this at another time, as this recording, it will be recorded. It will be housed in the Emory Law YouTube channel, as well as on the Career Center's internal library for students to view at a different time. So I just want to thank you all for being here and sharing very much. I know you guys are very busy, so this is a very important discussion that we had. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, attendees, for attending, for those who participated and asked wonderful questions. And again, this will be recorded, so please let your friends and colleagues who may not have been able to attend today live, that they can look at this video internally on the Career Center site, as well as the Emory Law YouTube channel. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.